All right. Hello and welcome to the Soul Wisdom Exchange. I'm Regina Curtis, the creator of At Matrix and the host of the Soul Wisdom Exchange. So today I have Bridget here with me, and I'm super excited to have a conversation about soul wisdom, about the ways in which we understand that wisdom and utilize it in our lives and work. So, soul wisdom, for anyone who's joining in today who has not heard me talk about this format or this term, my definition of soul wisdom is our authentic ways of knowing and being. So, how we receive information and how we express information or express ourselves. So, Bridget, tell us a little bit about yourself and the space that you hold in the work that you do.
Sure. Well, thank you so much for having me. I
Absolutely.
feel so grateful. We recorded a podcast just the other day, and I've really just enjoyed all the conversations that we've had.
Yay,
So
me too.
thank you. Thank you. So the formal title, right, is I'm the founder of Exalted Publishing House. I'm a fellow podcast host. I'm a Kundalini yoga teacher. I'm a visibility coach. But a lot of the times I find labels so hard because we are always evolving and changing. And it's like one day I want to wear that hat, and another day I want to just be the human helper who has no labels.
Yes,
Um,
I love
so
it.
that's a big part of it all. And in addition, all of my work just involves around bringing badass humans together who want to
Mm.
share their message. They want to share their story. They want to share what they're doing in the world. And most of the time, they are doing the most cool things. And I just want more people to know about what they're doing.
Oh my goodness, I love that. And I totally relate to that. What you were saying about labels. It's funny because as I evolve, I find that my bio and my title changes all the time, and it grows. And sometimes it gets like really long when I try to encompass everything, and then I'll kind of bring it back in and streamline it, and then it grows again. So yeah, it's something that I've started to have a more interactive and flexible relationship with, is even my own labels and identity of and allowing that to change.
Yeah, I think it feels good. It's so funny. I have a couple of documents of like all of the different bios over the years, and it's just so funny to see how it's changed and evolved. And I like what you're saying about just giving ourselves the flexibility and the freedom to, change it as it comes.
Yes, absolutely. That's it's so true. And I think it's so necessary because we all are evolving so all the time, right? We're an ever evolving um, being as an individual, and same as in the collective, right? Like when we meet new people, that changes us, that transforms us. And we do the same for others. And so as we come into community, and we learn more about ourselves, that shifts our identity too. So, yeah, having that flexibility just feels like a more compassionate and nourishing thing right now.
Yeah, absolutely.
Beautiful. Well, tell us a little bit about your soul wisdom languages. So, how does your soul wisdom speak to and through you?
Mm. I would say some of my languages are being a connector, and that's
Mhm.
been something that's always been there through my life. However, I haven't always acknowledged it as such, as many of us probably don't realize until we have the moment of looking back and saying, oh, wow. So that's a big part of it. I love connecting people together who are on a similar journey, who want support, who want to be in community. And then even in my life, I love to be the person who is like, oh, you should meet this person, or this person does that. It's very natural for me to find that. In addition, I'd say another one of my soul languages is teaching. It's funny because in my yearbook, and I think like kindergarten or first grade, you had to write what you wanted to be when you were older. One answer was always a mom, so there's like a nurturing thread through it. And the other one was always a teacher. However, as I grew up, I was like, I'm not going to be a school teacher. Like, it's definitely not like that. But then I became a yoga teacher. I started teaching on Ayurveda and all these different mindfulness topics and health related topics. And now what I love to do is just teach people, be in that role and help guide people really to their own answers as I know it to be.
Yeah, definitely. I think being a teacher is so much broader than the definition that we maybe grew up with, or that has been adopted, I guess, societally, right, within our society, because there's so many ways that you can be a teacher. And in some ways, we all are teachers, right? We're all teaching in some way. But the way we do it, the modality or the space in which we do it is very different for each of us. Um, Also love that you said that being a connector, right? And you are an amazing connector, absolutely. Like I feel that 100%. I've experienced it, I've seen it, I've been a part of it, and it absolutely is one of your soul languages and one that you speak very well. Um, so that to me is what I would label as a way of being. And there's also a way of knowing in that, right? That's infused into that. They're not necessarily separate things. They are always in a dance together. There's some kind of flow that's happening with them. Can you talk a little bit about, so you talked a little bit about the expression part of it, right? Of connecting, what that looks like when you bring people together. Can you also talk about what's happening internally for you in your knowing so that you can recognize when those connections are there? How does that come through for you?
Yeah, I love this question. For me, it's like what feels good. And when I reflect, I love to reflect, I love to journal. I love all those types of introspective like activities and exercises. They've come very naturally to me. And when I look back through my life, there's all these like moments throughout that have just ignited something within that said, yes, like this feels good. This is
Yeah.
part of it. And even if I didn't have the language for it at the time, now looking back, it's that same internal nudge of, yeah, like this can be something for you. And I think with gifts and even these soul languages, we tend to overlook them because they're so easy for us. They're so
Yes.
natural. And we're like, oh, everyone can do this. I know that was my story. Everyone can do this.
Uh-huh.
But that's not always the case. So those little internal nudges for me just feel like, yeah, like, yes, yes, yes.
I love that. Absolutely. And that is something, one of the reasons why I really love having these conversations is for people to have access to a wide variety of experiences. And yet there are threads that are very, very present in all of them. And one of those threads is that soul languages are easy, right? Because you're speaking the language of your soul wisdom. It's something that you already are. You already know how to do it. It's already showing up. And so when I talk about getting soul wisdom fluency, right? Gaining fluency in this language, it's not necessarily that there's anything you have to learn. It's more about identifying, recognizing, celebrating, right? Allowing these languages to really be a guidance system for you, and honoring that there is value in that, even though it's easy, especially because it's easy, right? How much value does that bring if the very thing that you are doing is just showing up being yourself, and that is your most valuable asset?
I feel like there's so much kind of deconditioning that needs to happen for some
Yeah.
of us to really accept this because I think throughout our lives, we're told and taught that we have to learn something to be able to master it, right? You go to school and
Yes.
you're taking a math class, you're going to take the test, and the test tells you if, your answers on the test tell you if you're good enough at that thing. But what this is it's such an internal, innate part of ourselves that it's challenging for us to say, oh yeah, this is it, like this is just who we are, because we've always been told that we have to master something or learn it or
Mhm.
kind of improve on it for it to be okay and okay to be shared.
Yeah. And that it comes from something outside of you, right? That there's some kind of method or tool or system or teacher that you have to learn it from in order to become masterful in that, right? But where did those masters become masterful from,
Mm.
right? Maybe they learned it from someone else, but if you dig way back enough, right, to the very origin of something, it was through someone's personal experience.
Wow, it's such a beautiful reminder. And for me, like, this is why I love community, because
Mhm.
And this is why another one of my soul languages would be a gatherer, someone who brings people together. I love to be the host, whether it's having people at my house, hi, welcome, like, can I get you a drink? Or on a Zoom call, like, welcome to the networking event. It's all the same for me. But a lot of the times on these journeys, when we're unlearning some of these things that have been so ingrained in us, there's nothing like having the support of other people, or just even hearing the stories of other people to say, oh, wow, like they're expanding my consciousness of what's possible. And even when someone listens to something like this, they're like, oh, wow, it is possible.
Yeah, absolutely. Exactly. So can you talk a little bit for us about the journey that you've taken to get to this place of awareness, and how you've come to really bring that into your life?
Yeah. I'm going to start by thanking my parents, because there was seeds that were planted at a young age that said you can do anything that you want, and also creativity is welcomed. So
Beautiful.
between my two siblings and I, we are vastly different because we were allowed to nurture what felt good. My sister's a theatrical singer. My brother works at Google and is like the tech person. But each one of us has excelled in very different directions because there was this allowance of creativity from a really young age.
I love that. Yes, I thank your parents too. And that is something that, and I know you and I just recorded a podcast for the Gathering movement as well, and we touched on this a little bit. But I want to bring that conversation in here too, because there are many different ways that those seeds can get planted. And for you, it sounds like the environment that you were in was a very nourishing one for those seeds to grow in, right? For some, that environment isn't quite as nourishing, right? Or maybe not at all. But through that experience, they're still pulling away the insights, right, of the importance of that ability to be creative. And so whether we experience something because we're connecting with it, or we're experiencing, and when I say connecting, because these are really two kind of the same thing, right? When you connect with something, and I know right now we're on a podcast, so I'm going to put my hands together, right? And for anyone who's listening later on the podcast, if your hands are touching each other, right, there's a connection there. And you can choose to have that connection because it's nourishing, because it's warming, because it feels aligned for you, right? But there's also, if I push against my hands and I'm pushing against each other, there's a resistance. That also is connection, right? So they're essentially the same thing. It's how you come into it in the mindset of the experience that causes it to be different, right? Because if I put my hands together, you don't know whether I'm pushing them together or I'm trying to hold them together, right?
Such a beautiful example of what it can look like. And it's a great reminder because, and as you talked about on my show too, it's not that teachers are always, the happy-go-lucky, perfect example of a teaching. And while I had my parents to foster this creative seed within me, I also had my own challenges that had to do with health. And that was one of the biggest teachers that really guided me. And this was at a very young age. So we're talking 13, 14, 15 years old when someone is trying to, come to terms with their identity and starting to figure out, who am I on this planet? What is this planet? Where am I? Kind of things. And I was dealing with pneumonia, strep infections, and staph infections where you don't want to have a staph infection, and gynecological problems, gut issues, all stemming from Lyme disease. So that was a massive teacher because it was a painful teacher. And there's so much beauty within that pain for me personally. And I can, say this looking back and not personally experiencing some of the same symptoms I was at the time, but that was such a catalyst, such a seed planted at a very young age of your body matters, what you put into your body, minds, relationships, thoughts, all of it does matter. And you have power within that. You are not the victim. But that took some time to come to.
Yeah, absolutely. And, it's interesting because those two experiences, even if we just look at those two layers of influence that were happening at the time, right? Your parents were encouraging you and your siblings to explore creatively, right? And your body was encouraging you to explore creatively as well, right? But from very different angles. And so there's there's a thread between those two, right? Which is that your experience matters. Your body, your expression of what's happening in your body, your reaction to or your response to what's happening. And those are very different things, right? Reacting and responding. That you matter, right? Like that's what it all boils down to. And I feel like in some ways, all of our experiences are bringing us back to that same revelation of where are you in this?
Yeah, and to talk about your story and your voice matters, one of the biggest memories I have of that healing journey was a couple years in. And at this point, I had been on a number of rounds of antibiotics, a number of rounds of protocols, and, doctor after doctor. Frustration had already set in. And I go to the gastroenterologist for a colonoscopy, and I put together my entire medical history because the seeds started to be planted that the body is connected. So although, they're going to look at your colon, your digestive tract, everything that you've put into your body up until this moment, every diagnosis that you've had up until this moment has impacted you in some way, shape, or form. So I put together this entire medical history. I'm like 15 years old, using all my online tech resources, looking everything up, creating documents, and he didn't look at it. I put together this whole folder and he didn't look at it. And I just remember leaving that doctor's office like crying because I was so upset. I was like, Mom, he didn't look, like he didn't care.
Yeah.
And oh my gosh, this is why I love what I do now, because we all have these stories and these memories that were really challenging, and to give a voice to it, to be seen in that space, like so much healing happens just when we're seen for the story and we're seen for the emotions and we're seen for what we've gone through, not to define ourselves as that, but to say, I experienced this, and because of that, I am the person I am today.
Yes. Yes. It's that recognition of who you are, right? You as a person. And if I think of the term holistic medicine, right? The way that it's spelled is HOLISTIC, right? I can spell, but but the way that I see it in my head and the way that I feel it in my body is HOLE, right? Holistic. And maybe that's where it came from, maybe not. But one of the things that I really love to do is to explore language and to explore words, because the way that we intend them sometimes and the way that we receive them are not always in alignment. But I've found that as I allow the words that I use to come in with more intention, and I actually listen to my soul wisdom, a lot of times I get words that I don't use those words. I've maybe never used it before in my life. It's probably a word that I've heard before. Otherwise, how would I know to be able to formulate it in my mouth? But when I stop and listen and let the word drop in, and then I go and explore what that word means, there's an accuracy that aligns with the intent of its usage or the intent of how it's expressing that isn't always there when I try to use the words that I've always used, right? Or to even spell them in the way that they've always been spelled. So when I started playing around with this, one of the things that started happening is, and I'll share a little bit about my soul languages, right? How I receive is that I can feel words, like I feel them and I visualize them at the same time, and sometimes they break apart into sections. So whether it is like, for some reason the word that's coming through right now is like disrespect, but I see that as disrespect, and it's like, okay, what does that mean? Why is it showing up in that way, right? But what I think it's bringing in is like bringing in the, what does dis mean, right? It's disassociating, separating from. Re means reenacting, doing again. So if I look at that as respect and then disrespect, it's like, how are you engaging with that? You're actually disengaging with it and then reenacting something that is the opposite of the word respect, right? And I don't know why that word is coming in right now, but that was the one that was coming in. And I know this is all tying back into the idea of a story, right? Because when we tell our story, we're using words, we're using pictures, we're using language in some way to tell that story. And what we're intending, right? What we're infusing, the intent that we're infusing into what we're sharing isn't always experienced in the same way. And that can be very polarizing. It can be very disappointing, right? It can be, it can pull us away from that feeling of I've been seen or I've been heard, which is really what you're trying to accomplish.
I've actually never thought about words in that way. And I also think this kind of points to your just creative mind. And I remember when I was interviewing you, and it's like you have this ability to separate concepts, but then see all the threads between them. Like I see it as all these little circles with connected lines.
Yeah, absolutely. That is very true. I mean, even if you look at the background of the
Yep.
image that's on the screen right now, right? Like that is how I experience things. And I don't know. I mean, it's something that I really enjoy doing, is bringing those threads into awareness so that then you can choose, like the hands again, right? Do you choose to bring them together? Do you choose to allow them to push against each other, or do you mindfully separate them and allow that space to come in? And in whatever way that shows up for you, in whatever way it aligns for you in what you need, when you have that whole story, though, you get to be more mindful in what you're choosing.
Yeah, and this is why I love to help people connect the dots of their own story, because when I did that for myself, it was like, oh my God, it all makes sense. Like it makes sense why you had this experience at such a young age to then be propelled on this path that you never expected to be on, but it was perfect.
Yes. Yeah. And that's, there's a saying that I hear often and I really resonate with, which is that your own medicine becomes your magic, right? So that's what you're doing. You're alchemizing that experience that you have and learning to take your own medicine, right? Before you then alchemize it into the magic that you give to the world. So talk to me a little bit about how you utilize your soul wisdom in the work that you do with others.
Well, it has absolutely evolved over the last couple of years. And I'll kind of fast forward us a bit to 2016 when I quit my corporate job in New York City. I was in advertising sales, cold calling people and business owners every single day, which was beautiful in disguise because I learned a lot about sales and putting myself out there, but it was not aligned. So I left the job and decided I'm going to become a yoga instructor because yoga has helped me heal. It's helped me connect with my body. So I ended up going to Ibiza to study yoga and Ayurveda because Ayurveda had also helped me so much so in my healing journey. And I was like, okay, I'm going to move back in with my parents. I'm going to start teaching. I'm just going to start. And that's really been my mantra throughout life. It's just start. Just do one thing that's going to propel you forward and just keep showing up for it.
Yes.
Keep showing up for it. Keep showing up for it. And that's what I did. So it started with me just teaching yoga classes at a variety of local studios, building a community here. And because I felt so alone on that journey, I started hosting women's circles. I was like, let's just gather together. We'll talk about a certain topic. We'll chant, we'll sing mantra, we'll move our bodies, and we'll just be seen. And again, it just continued to evolve. And as it continued to evolve, I said, okay, what's the next way I can help someone? Which was becoming a holistic health coach, because I knew so much about nutrition and helping people. And I began doing that. But what was a big reminder was I love to be with groups. So it started to shift. And especially, this is now 2019. I got this pull to start really going online, maybe 2018, go online. So I left some of the yoga jobs and I just started to create online communities. Literally a Facebook group is what this looked like. An online.
That's really what was available at that time, I think.
That was it. So
Yep.
creating the online community, bringing people together, hosting workshops, just even online, and starting to grow that way. And again, it just kept morphing and evolving, but still those same themes, the soul languages were there, like connect, teach, gather people together, connect, teach, gather people together. And as I continued doing that, I started to move into the space of I want to work with entrepreneurs. I am the person who is highly driven, highly motivated, and I want to help people get their message seen and heard.
Yes.
And that's bringing me to where I am today. In the last probably 2 years, it's been working with female entrepreneurs, gathering us together, hosting networking events, sometimes women's circles. And I found myself in the publishing world because I loved multi-author books. I loved co-authored books. I loved doing things together. And actually, to this day, I haven't felt called to work with just one author. Like, I want to do things as a group. So I just keep listening, and I'm sure it's going to evolve
Yes.
as we go.
Yeah. So I want to reflect for a moment on one of the things that I see in there is that you said that being in advertising wasn't aligned for you, right? But when you pull back and look at it from the position where you are right now, you can see that it was no longer aligned for you in that moment, but it was absolutely aligned with your overarching path, right? The journey that you were on. And one of the really big insights that I have had come through in my own journey and that I see show up in those, I also work with entrepreneurs, right? Like of people who are building soul guided businesses. So I say soulpreneurs is the term I use. But one of the big sticking points for people, that moment of resistance, right, is when we come into those moments where we realize that we're no longer in alignment with something and that we've been conditioned to believe that if it's time for something to go in another direction, it equals failure. But what if instead of seeing that as failure, we celebrated, thank you for what you've taught me. Maybe I know what it is right now. Maybe I won't know it for 20 years, right? There are certainly things that have shown up in the work that I've been doing one-on-one with people or in groups with people where experiences that I had when I was 4 years old or 14 years old or 24 years old or whatever will come in, and I'll have this realization of if I had not had that exact experience in my life, I would not be able to have the exact experience that I'm having right now. And when in the moment that was happening, when I was 4 or 14 or whatever age I wasn't experiencing it necessarily as in 24 years or in however many years, I'm going to have this interaction with someone and this is going to be the most valuable thing that I can say to them or that I can share with them because we have this relatable experience. And that's what it looks like to have a soul guided structure in your business, right? You've evolved your business as you've evolved your individual self. And
Absolutely.
that's alignment, right? Those two things are in alignment with each other. So one concept that we hear a lot is like work-life balance, right? Pardon my language, but that's complete bullshit if you ask me, because we are the common thread, right? We are the one common factor in both of those things. Our life and our work, we are the central point of that. Those things exist within our sphere of existence. So how can we really truly balance those things out as if they're like separate on a scale somewhere? They're not.
Yeah, and I think, I mean, that concept comes from people being so disconnected from how they live their everyday lives, because most people are, in the hamster wheel of I have to go to this job for 40 years, which I hate. I hate waking up for it. So they need to have this concept of work-life balance to
Right.
feel some sort of inner safety. But what's happening here is more and more people are leaving those jobs because, they've had the last year and a half, 2 years actually at this point, really,
Mm-hmm.
to enjoy life and to say, what is life?
Yeah.
What is true living on a day-to-day basis? So those people are leaving their jobs and they're just being invited into some questions of who are you? What do you enjoy? And could you create something out of your natural God-given gifts? And the answer is yes.
Yes, absolutely. So, okay, you and I both work with entrepreneurs. I don't work only with entrepreneurs because sometimes there are people that align that are in the sphere of work, right? Like in the corporate space. What is, I think a lot of times people who are working with entrepreneurs or are very much connected in those spaces, there's this belief that, I don't even know if it's a belief. It's more like a myth or a way of looking at it that we believe that entrepreneurship is the only way, right? And it's like, oh, corporate is a bad space because I left that, and so therefore, I think that that's like the spawn of all evil. But I don't necessarily feel that way, and I can definitely appreciate the time that I had, a lot of the connections that I made, the skills that I learned when I was in that space. And I do believe that it is a space that some people thrive in. So what are your thoughts on that?
Thank you for bringing this up. Yeah, it's a really good point. Starting something on your own, let's not sugarcoat it. It's challenging. Like there are absolutely aspects to this where it's been hard.
Yes.
And I've always felt it in my bones that like I was meant to be an entrepreneur, and that's it. But I'll give the example of my mom. My mom is also a holistic health coach. She's also, a yogi, meditator, has been on a major healing chronic illness journey. And she's at a point in her life where she doesn't want to start her own business. Like that doesn't feel good for her.
Mm-hmm.
So what she is looking into is working and teaming up with doctors who have a similar mission, who already have the infrastructure, and where she can see herself, fitting into the equation, helping and still honoring her gifts.
Yes.
And I thank you for bringing this up because yes, it doesn't have to just look this one way. And I know many people in a corporate profession that really do enjoy what they do.
Yep.
They really do enjoy what they do. They love that structure, and that is beautiful. So that's my thoughts on it. It's not the end all be all, either one.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I think that as long as the space that you're working in is one that nourishes who you are and what your gifts are, what you bring to the table, that can celebrate that and support that, and whatever your mission is that you're individually on, right? Like your soul mission, if that is in alignment with the space that you're working in and it can help amplify that, wonderful, right? That I don't think there's any experience that is all good or all bad, right? Like that you can have the experience of being really seen, heard, and valued in a variety of different spaces. And ultimately that starts with having that relationship within, right? But if you can, some people really are like, it is the work that they're doing needs that kind of amplification. A couple of years, I guess it was last year, really, I have different words or different phrases, I guess, themes that come through to me from my soul guidance in different phases of my experience. Mm-hmm. And It's not necessarily like this year I'm going to focus on this word, but it's more like a conversation that I have with my soul wisdom. And it generally, for me, it starts to become, I become aware of it somewhere in the like end of summer or early fall. It starts to really kind of become present for me. And then I see that I work with that kind of through a couple of seasons, and then it will start to morph and bring in other things. But last year, I was really working with the theme of aligned expansion. And when I first started to join that conversation, I thought it meant expand your business, right? Okay, I'm expanding my business. That means I need to grow in numbers. I need to add more revenue. I need to add more options for, things that people can engage with. And it was just this immediate sense that I needed to add. And I did that for a little while, and that felt aligned. And then all of a sudden, I started getting deepen, right? And it happened I originally got it through a visualization and a meditation where I was attempting to connect in to be able to, expand my energy out. And what happened was that I had to I almost got like this blockage. I don't know if you've ever done a visualization where you kind of like grow roots down into the ground and connect down with the core of the earth, right? And you connect up through spirit, and you expand out that way. Well, when I attempted to connect my energy down, I couldn't go anywhere. It was like, no, you can't go deeper right here. And I was like, okay. And so my visualized roots started growing out. And I live in a pretty, metropolitan area. And what I was getting was that where I live near a lake, and there's a lot of buildings and a lot of energy. And when I tried to go down, I just got this no, that's not where you need to go right now. So I started expanding out, and it was like the roots expanded out into the water and out into the land. And when I got to places that felt more open and expansive and natural, right, there was a lot more nature, then they started going deeper. And so then the next kind of evolution of that was expand to go deeper. And then from that point, I really started going deeper into relationships and deeper into the content. And this kind of energy of add started to become define, refine, streamline, just go deeper. And that was a whole another, part of that relationship. So I don't remember why I started going on this tangent, but I think it's about sometimes you need that amplification, right, of the numbers, the mass of energy in order to amplify what it is you're doing. And in other cases, it's more about deepening. Yes. Deepening connections and bringing in connections that are on a deeper level.
I love this. Something that really resonated with me when I started studying Ayurveda was this ability to work with the seasons of nature, and how the seasons of nature signify something within our bodies, right? So in the winter, we naturally crave soups and stews. It's very apparent. Our skin gets a little bit more dry. So we take the time, oil up, moisturize, whatever. And I think the same thought can be brought into business. There are different seasons that we go through. And for me last year, it was very much this, you're expanding, you're growing. It's going to be a very fiery year for you. And it's funny. And I started laughing and smiling because you were like, yeah, toward the end of last year, I started getting these hints and signals. And that's exactly what it felt like for me. It was this year is going to be year of slowness. It's actually going to be your year of the sloth, Bridget, where it's spacious. You don't have a rush to be in anywhere, because what I realized was, although I've done so much work to, take a look at some of the patterns within, there was still a pattern and a, software that I was running through me, which said, you have to grow big, fast, and excel. And I asked myself why. Like, why do I feel like I'm in any rush? Because that
Mhm.
rush is only something I've placed on myself.
Yep.
So, this is my year of the sloth. And while there will
Beautiful.
be growth, it's going to be the slow and steady, not overwhelming, not overworking.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, absolutely. That exact theme came up in one of my, I think it was this one. Um, I'm getting one of my soul wisdom vistas. Um, Measured progress is the theme that was coming up. And yeah, slow and steady is definitely a theme that I've been getting. I've seen it show up in many of the energetic intuitives that I work with and that I follow and collaborate with, that it really is. It's this kind of slow down to refill, reset, um, and recalibrate, right? Like where are you going? Where are you wanting to go? Because when we are in that rush energy, we're not necessarily really mindful of that, right? Like it's like we know where our destination is, or we think we do, right? Because we tune into it at one point and we're like, okay, here's where I'm heading. And then we spend so much energy just like pushing through to try to get there that sometimes the entire landscape changes around us and we aren't actually aligned with that anymore, because what we really need may be to go on a slower path, right? To take a little bit of a different route. Maybe we end up in the same place, or maybe we're actually, what we're desiring is something that's completely different that we didn't even know existed when we set out, on the journey in the first place. So yeah, it's just that like the way that same theme has come through for me, the language of it is make more space for space.
Oh, it's so beautiful. And I think this ties in with our whole conversation thus far, which is not that, that last year of going fast was bad. There
No.
was so much magic within that space. And I learned so much, and it gave me so much clarity, because we live on a polarity planet. We're here to just
Yes.
experience it all, and it's all beautiful, even in the moments where it's challenging, or even in the moments of, hey, that's actually not how I want to lead and move forward for the next time being. And
Right.
then maybe it might evolve from there. Like, I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah. And the really cool thing about seasons has definitely been coming up for me too, in all different layers of the work that I'm doing, individually, and what it is that I'm sharing with others, because seasons are really fascinating too, because we are in the energy of multiple seasons at any given time. Because if you start to look at I keep using this term layers of influence. This is what the way that it really is kind of formulating for me. But in our bodies, we have one layer of influence that we are aware of, which is our consciousness, right? Our conscious brain. And so we might be in the energy of one season in that layer, but our body might be also experiencing another season, right? So, and I think Ayurvedic, the study of Ayurveda would probably align with that in some way, that, like, for instance, I have my main constitution is kapha, but I have, a lot of vata influence that comes in. And, I mean, we are all of the doshas, right, in some way. My partner is very pitta energy, and I can see a big difference in that, and what we need in our bodies and what we need in our experiences, and how that evolves over time changes, right? Like it changes in the winter, it changes in the summer. If you bring in a layer of influence of astrology into that, the house that you're in, right? The house that you're experiencing in any one given moment, there's a seasonal shift to that as well. And whatever, the moon is doing, if you look at the phases of the moon, there are seasonal energies that shift and align with those as well. And so it's like all of these things are happening simultaneously. So you might be feeling it in one kind of layer of influence, whether that is your work life or your home life or your body, right? Your relationship with your body, but you're also experiencing what's happening collectively around you. So what is your family doing? What are your, business collaborators doing? What are your clients feeling and needing right now? Because that's also part of the conversation.
Yeah, that was really beautifully put. I've never thought about all of the layers to all of it. Yeah.
It can get overwhelming. I I actually I have to like pull myself back in sometimes, because the way that I receive often is in these like really, really expanded understandings of things. And I can digest it all at once, but when I try to share it all at once, it's a little too much. So yeah, it's like finding the pieces and being able to, you said that one of the things that I can do is I can see how everything relates together, right? And find the threads. So it's finding those threads and then allowing those threads to come through rather than the whole big picture. Yeah. So there's challenges in that too, right? Like that's how learning to use your magic, use those soul wisdom languages um, to support you as much as you support others.
Yeah, I'm similar in that way, though. I'm very much a big picture visionary. I can see where we're going or where I want to go. But
Uh-huh.
then the challenge for me is always, okay, boiling it down to this moment and saying, what do I need to do in this very moment? Or who do I need to be in this very moment? I'm not very much a detail oriented person.
Yeah, it's I think that there's so many benefits in every part of that, right? In every aspect of that. And when you can partner with someone or when you can collaborate with someone who does bring that element in, then it's kind of like bringing back that whole holistic idea, right? Of, okay, so this might be what I'm doing specifically. And if I know that this is what I really shine, if this is the place where I really shine, how can I then bring that energy into community or into partnership or in whatever way really feeds what my needs are, while I'm also being able to shine that light and feed others too. So yeah, it's such a great, I don't know, I don't want to use the word great. It is a powerful, it's a really powerful experience when you bring that awareness in and you allow yourself to, one, be guided by that awareness with intention and compassion, and also to do it with a sense of curiosity so that, it can be flexible, it can be flowing, it can be a little bit of a mystery, right? That keeps it exciting.
I love the curiosity piece. Curiosity really is the antidote to most things.
Oh my gosh, absolutely. Yeah, I totally agree. We need to bottle it and be able to take that. Um, well, I could just have this conversation forever, and I know that we've reached our time here for today, but tell us how people can connect with you and continue to, learn from you and collaborate with you in whatever ways that you are offering right now.
Sure. So you can friend me on Facebook. My name is Bridget Aileen Sicsko. You can also connect with me on Instagram. My handle is at Blissful Bridget, and I love to just show up there in a little bit more of a creative way, and I love to share stories.
Beautiful, beautiful. And your podcast is called The Gathering Movement. And definitely sign up for that. Follow, and it's on Apple Podcasts, right? Is the place?
Yeah, all the podcast places.
Beautiful, excellent. And we'll be posting our conversation there soon. So thank you so much for being here. I know I saw a couple people popping in and out live, so thank you if you were here live, and thank you if you're watching this later or listening on the podcast. And we'll be back again soon. Started back up again for January, so I'll see you all soon. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.